Story 1. The beach. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the beach as the last few beachgoers were packing up and leaving for the day. A young couple, hand in hand, strolled along the water's edge, their footprints the only ones marring the otherwise pristine sand. The air was still and heavy, the only sound the gentle lapping of the waves against the shore. As they walked, the couple came across an old, abandoned lifeguard tower, its paint peeling and wood weathered. Drawn to it, they decided to climb up to the top for a better view of the sunset. As they reached the top, they noticed something strange. The beach was completely deserted. There were no other people, no seagulls, not even the sound of the distant traffic. The silence was deafening. A sense of unease crept over them, and they started to climb down the ladder. But as they did, they heard a noise behind them. They turned around to see a tall, dark figure standing at the edge of the cliff, its back turned to them. The figure was tall and thin, with a long, flowing black coat. It didn't move, but it seemed to radiate an aura of menace. The couple froze, their hearts pounding in their chests. Slowly, the figure turned around, and the couple gasped in horror. Its face was pale and gaunt, with sunken eyes and a razor-sharp smile. Its eyes were glowing with an eerie red light. The creature opened its mouth and let out a blood-curdling scream. The couple screamed back and scrambled down the ladder, running for their lives. They didn't look back once until they reached the safety of their car. As they drove away, they glanced back in the rearview mirror, but the creature was gone. They never went back to that beach again, and they never forgot the terrifying thing they saw standing on the cliff. Some people say that the creature was the ghost of a drowned sailor, forever searching for the living to take with him to the depths of the sea. Others say that it was a demon, drawn to the beach by the negative energy of the people who had come there to relax and have fun. Whatever it was, the couple knew that they had seen something real, something evil, and they knew that they would never forget the horror of that night on the deserted beach. Story 2. Old Woman. On a dark and stormy night, a young woman named Sarah was driving home from work when she saw something strange in the distance. A small, abandoned lighthouse stood on a rocky cliff overlooking the ocean. The waves were crashing against the rocks with a fury, and the wind was howling like a banshee. Sarah felt a strange pull towards the lighthouse, and she decided to stop and take a closer look. She parked her car and got out, bracing herself against the wind. As she walked towards the lighthouse, she felt a sense of dread creeping over her. She reached the lighthouse and peered through the windows, but she couldn't see anything inside. The windows were boarded up, and the door was locked. Sarah turned to leave, but then she heard a noise behind her. She turned around and saw a tall, dark figure standing in the doorway. The figure was wearing a long, black coat, and its face was hidden in the shadows. Sarah couldn't make out any features, but she could feel the figure's eyes on her. Sarah froze in terror, unable to move. The figure took a step towards her, and Sarah let out a scream. She turned and ran as fast as she could, but the figure was close behind her. She ran down the path towards her car, but the figure was gaining on her. She could hear its heavy footsteps behind her, and she knew that she wasn't going to outrun it. Just as the figure was about to grab her, Sarah reached her car and threw open the door. She jumped inside and slammed the door shut, locking it behind her. She started the car and peeled away, leaving the figure standing in the road. Sarah drove away as fast as she could, not daring to look back in the rearview mirror. She didn't know what the figure was, but she knew that it was something evil. She never went back to the lighthouse again, and she never forgot the terrifying night she met the creature in the dark. Some people say that the creature was the ghost of a former lighthouse keeper who had been murdered many years ago. Others say that it was a demon, drawn to the lighthouse by the negative energy of the people who had come there to take their own lives. Whatever it was, Sarah knew that she had seen something real, something evil, and she knew that she would never forget the horror of that night on the stormy beach. Story 3. The beach was deserted, save for a lone figure walking along the shore. The man was tall and thin, with long, unkempt hair and a beard that covered most of his face. He was dressed in a long, black coat that billowed in the wind. The man walked with a strange gait, as if he were dragging his feet through the sand. His head was hung low, and his eyes were hidden in the shadows of his hood. As he walked, he muttered to himself, his words lost in the wind. He seemed lost in thought, oblivious to the world around him. Suddenly, The man stopped and turned around. He looked up at the sky, and his eyes widened in horror. He let out a blood-curdling scream and pointed towards the horizon. A dark cloud had formed over the ocean, and it was growing larger and darker by the second. The wind picked up, and the waves began to crash against the shore with renewed ferocity. The man turned and ran back towards the beach, but it was too late. The storm was upon him. Lightning flashed and thunder roared as the rain came down in sheets. The wind whipped the sand into a frenzy, and the waves crashed over the shore, engulfing everything in their path. The man was knocked to the ground by a gust of wind, and he was quickly buried under the sand. He struggled to free himself, but the sand was too heavy. He could feel the water seeping into his lungs, and he knew that he was going to die. He closed his eyes and waited for the end. But then, he heard something strange. It was a voice, a low, whispering voice, that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The voice spoke to him in a language he didn't understand, but he could feel its meaning. It was a message of hate and despair, a promise of pain and suffering. The voice grew louder and louder, and the man felt a wave of terror wash over him. He knew that he was not alone. There was something else there, something evil. He opened his eyes and screamed, but his voice was lost in the wind and rain. He was all alone, trapped in a living nightmare. The storm raged on for hours, and when it finally subsided, the beach was a scene of devastation. The man's body was never found. Some people say that he is still there, trapped in the sand, waiting for someone to come and find him. Others say that his spirit has been taken by the voice, that he is now part of the darkness that lurks beneath the waves. Whatever the truth, one thing is for sure. The man on the beach was never the same after that night. He had seen something he was never meant to see, and it had changed him forever. Some people say that the creature was the ghost of a drowned sailor forever searching for the living to take with him to the depths of the sea. Others say that it was a demon, drawn to the beach by the negative energy of the people, who had come there to relax and have fun. Whatever it was, the old woman knew that she had seen something real, something evil, and she knew that she would never forget the horror of that night on the stormy beach.